Hey guys, this is Glenn Davies, Dr. Glenn Davies, but not only Dr. Glenn Davies, GP of the Year award was awarded to him by Meditech.
By Medtech?
Medtech. And Glenn just told me Medtech is a company that does all the computer software for everything you guys run, which is interesting that he won that. And last year he was runner-up for it as well, which was just really awesome for me because I am an advocate of fasting and the keto diet. Through my own journey, I've been on for 3 years now, and this really added a lot of weight to what I've been teaching a lot of particularly my patrons about health in general. So that's really cool. Today we're going to tackle a question that he put aside. I don't think he wants me to tackle this, but it was regarding why in Japan, the traditional Japanese diet, their last talk was this, why
I thought we weren't going to talk about that.
No, we weren't, but I'm putting him on the spot. I'm putting him on the spot because we didn't really address that. They eat rice, which is outside of the carb thing. So we look at that one there. And we're also going to talk about things to do to increase your immune system. And also, are we going to talk about cancer?
Yeah.
And the big one we're going to talk about, which is big for us hunters, is veganism, vegetarianism, and
meat.
And meat.
You know, does meat cause cancer, or is meat a health food?
Okay, so I'll let Glenn take over and we'll kick it in the guts.
Do I have to talk about the rice?
You do. Well, you've got to address that question. I know you haven't prepared yourself for it.
So I call clay Deimos, so I'll probably do that without thinking.
It's an old nickname from a story from we used to flat together. So
yeah. So if I call clay Deimos, just interpret that in your own mind because I'll do it naturally. Okay. So we did a YouTube some time ago, and Deimos asked me the question, how is it that rice is a big source of carbohydrate and sugar? In fact, one serving of rice has the equivalent of 10 teaspoons of sugar.
Really?
You should only have 1 teaspoon of sugar in your whole 5 litres of blood. Yet, one serving of rice, when it's broken down, becomes 10 teaspoons of sugar. So you ask me, how is it that in Japan and other Asian countries they eat a lot of rice, yet they still don't have high levels of diabetes? And it's a very good question, and I'm not sure that I have an authoritative answer, but some of the factors that might be involved is, one, I understand that rice traditionally in Japan was more of a ceremonial food. It's only more recently that it's become a 3 meals a day food, possibly, so that could be a factor. But I think the big factor here is that it's actually sugar and refined carbohydrates that are the biggest problem. You know, particularly sugar. Sugar, the fructose component of sugar is a toxin which directly affects the biochemistry of the liver, and it causes insulin resistance. Okay, so the body sort of knows what to do with glucose. It struggles to know what to do with fructose, and particularly these very, very high amounts that people are now consuming.
What about vegetable oils in Japan too?
Yeah, so vegetable oils is the other big issue. We have told people that they should avoid saturated fat and that they should substitute with polyunsaturated vegetable oils. I believe that advice is completely and 100% detrimental and wrong.
Wow, hear that again. What we've been taught our whole lives, that fat is actually, you're saying, is not bad for us.
So let's talk about saturated fat. So I don't want to get into the biochemistry of fats, but let's just do this a little bit. So there's saturated fat, monounsaturated fat, and polyunsaturated fats or oils. And all it is where the double bond is in the chemistry of that fatty acid chain. So for example, a saturated fat has all double bonds and it has no single bonds. Where the single bond is where the chain can be changed in shape, or something can be joined to it.
Right.
So a saturated fat is very, very stable. You can do all sorts of stuff to it and it doesn't change its structure. Particularly, you can heat it to high temperatures. That's probably the number one point about a saturated fat, is you can heat it to very high temperatures and cool it and it won't have changed its structure. Compare that with olive oil, which is a monounsaturated fat. It has one double bond. at that double bond, that's when you can change its shape.
Yeah.
And that's why we advocate that you don't heat olive oil to a high temperature.
To a high temperature, yeah.
If you're wanting to cook a steak, for example, cook it in coconut oil or lard or tallow, one of these traditional saturated fats that you can heat to a high temperature without changing.
Lard's great.
Yeah. And save your olive oil for
Drizzle over
salads.
the top, mousse salad.
Yeah. But now, these polyunsaturated oils, vegetable oils. So just think about that for a moment. How long do you have to squeeze a carrot for or wring a carrot for to get oil out of it?
Well, you can't.
There is no oil in vegetables.
There's no oil at all, no. Yeah.
Or like if there is, it's a minuscule
There's no
amount.
such thing. Vegetable oil is mostly comes from what, palm oil or from sunflower seeds or something like that? Yeah,
well,
seeds.
canola oil's the worst one. They talk about 20 industrial processes to turn it from rapeseed, and rapeseed doesn't sound like a good thing.
No.
Does it? 20 industrial processes to turn it into canola oil, which stands for Canadian oil.
Right.
You know, and I imagined canola beans growing happily and wildly in the environment. They don't.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then margarine's probably the poster child for the unhealthy oils. Someone said that they went into a margarine factory and there's just this grey stuff dripping off the walls and it stinks and it's just yuck. You have to deodorize it and colour it to make it look something like butter for human consumption.
Right.
Why not just have butter?
Yeah, butter's so good.
Butter's so good, yeah.
Okay, well that sort of was a pretty long way to describe the rice thing. We went off a little bit.
Did we go away from rice?
We kind of got away
Was
from it.
that deliberate, perhaps?
It probably was, yeah. But
I'm suspecting that it's the sugar and the polyunsaturated vegetable oils that have come into the diet that is causing much more of a problem than glucose,
yeah.
Which comes from the rice.
Okay.
I think that the body, to some extent, knows how to deal with the glucose. It
Right.
struggles to deal with the fructose component, which is in sugar. And it certainly doesn't know how to deal with these modern industrial seed oils or vegetable oils.
Right, yeah.
Which, and we do horrible things to them. They maybe just used once, it might not be so bad, but you think what happens in a fish and chip shop, they use the cheapest oil and they heat it day after day after day, heat it and cool it.
Changing
its structure,
Yeah.
adding dangerous compounds to it. I think that's the biggest issue. So I think maybe if you were having rice and vegetables and pure proteins,
Right.
I think you're going to be fine. When you add to it Coke, when you add to it deep frying and vegetable oils, when you add to it all of these processed foods that come in packets with warning signs, I think that's when we're really getting into trouble.
I want to argue against you here from what a lot of people say to me. A cardiologist or someone that works in heart will say, you shouldn't be having any of these saturated fats. They're bad for you. They can cause hardening of the arteries or thickening of the arteries. They can cause all sorts of problems. And they put you on this low-fat diet if you go to it. Now, I know myself that that's actually bullshit, but what you've just said, can you explain to people really why that sort of fat actually is not harmful if you've got a heart problem? This is really getting to area here, which is completely, I don't know if you can say that,
No,
you?
I can.
Can say, okay, because you've got science to back it. Okay, this is a good one. Check this out.
Just as the sort of lead-in, I think we find in science that the truth is in the next level down of detail.
Mm-hmm.
For example, and we'll talk about it soon, the meat issue.
We're going to hit that. Yeah,
you know, like the statement, meat is bad for you. In fact, once you get into the next levels down of detail, there's complexity in there that we will discuss. So it's exactly the same with saturated fat. Saturated fat does do harm. However, it's the saturated fat that we make
inside our bodies
from carbohydrates that causes the damage.
Right.
It's not the saturated fat that we eat that causes the damage. And
wow, that's a heavy thing right then, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's heavy.
So it's worth saying again, isn't it?
Yes.
Saturated fat can be a problem, but it's not saturated fat from the diet. It's saturated fat that we make from excess carbohydrate through a process in the liver which is called de novo lipogenesis. So biochemical term, but de novo lipogenesis. So lipo means fat, genesis to make, the making of new fat. And what do you make it from? You make it from excess carbohydrate,
and sugar,
particularly sugars,
yeah,
and refined carbohydrates. That fat, they're even chains. So that fatty acid tail has 12, 14, or 16 fatty acids making up the tail.
right.
But they're even numbers. That is what is made by de novo lipogenesis from carbohydrate. That is what ends up in the lipoproteins, which are the trucks which transport cholesterol
Yep.
and fats around the body.
Mm-hmm.
The fat that we eat does not end up in those packages. Only 0.05% of the saturated fat from the diet ends up in those trucks, which can eventually, but only if they're damaged, end up in the artery wall and cause the atherosclerotic plaque. So that's the other big thing about it. How do you turn healthy low density lipoproteins, so healthy trucks carrying cholesterol and triglyceride, how do you turn them from healthy ones which aren't going to cause any problems into damaged ones which can end up in the artery wall? And again, it comes back to two things: sugar and polyunsaturated vegetable oils. They turn them from large, buoyant, fluffy LDL into hard, damaged, small, dense LDL,
small, dense one,
which can eventually end up in the artery wall. And it all starts with sugar and carbohydrate.
This is so fascinating, and I'll tell a very short story about my experience when I went on the keto diet. And the nurse, I told this to Glenn last night, the nurse phoned me and said, "Oh, your cholesterol's at 7.5, your LDL, it's way too high." And I said to her, "Well, what sort of LDL are we talking? Are we talking the big fluffy big molecules of it, or the very fine small ones, the ones that actually do the damage?" And she said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, LDL is made up of, there's different types, and you can actually get this tested. There's a place in Germany. Glenn's now told me you can actually get tested in New Zealand." She didn't know anything about that, so then she put me on the doctor, and I talked to my doctor, and he said, "I don't know what you mean." So here, my general practitioner had no idea about the different types of LDL we have. So when you get this cholesterol report back, I believe eventually that these cholesterol things will get completely thrown out, because what Glenn's talking about is cutting edge medicine, which is now recognising just what he said, that actually that's not the issue. We need cholesterol. And what you just said sort of backs that. I'll let you carry on. That's interesting.
Yeah. Let's just talk a little bit. I think it's really important that we understand, how does that small, dense LDL, the damaged LDL that's been damaged by sugar and polyunsaturated vegetable oils, how does that end up in the artery wall?
Yeah.
The answer to that is that the part of it that gets damaged is the little receptor on the outside of the LDL, which allows it to bind into the binding site on the liver, to be taken back up by the liver, to be recycled.
Right.
That's the part that gets damaged. So these small dense LDL particles, or damaged LDL particles, cannot be taken back up by the liver. They remain in circulation about 3 times longer.
Right.
And the only place they get taken out of circulation is by specialized phagocytic cells. And guess where they live? In the artery wall.
Yeah.
So they take it up, and that's how you get oxidized, rusted, glycated, glucose attached to it, cholesterol particles into your artery wall, is because of that process. So I think for the first time in my life, I really understand, well, at least as much as we can to date, and we will keep learning, I'm sure. But I think I understand the process. And I now understand why, 1, it's safe to eat saturated fat from animal sources. 2, why cholesterol's not the main player here. And why it's a small damaged LDL that ends up creating that cholesterol plaque. So I think we now can give better public health messages, and we can do better cardiovascular risk assessment now. And it leads on to this question: should we be advising people to avoid saturated fat in their diet, or should we be telling them to avoid the polyunsaturated vegetable oils like margarine and canola oil? And I imagine that there are a lot of people that may view this video that are really interested in that question, because I believe that hunting is hugely important in New Zealand. I think that hunters and farmers are getting a bad rap, and it's not deserved. So one, I think the hunters are doing an incredible job of protecting our native bush, because the deer and the pigs
And the goats and,
and the goats and the rabbits and the possums are pests that are destroying our natural environment, and culling them, especially if they can then be used for food, is spot on. So that organic, high quality venison and pork is a health food.
Oh, absolutely.
It is a health food, and our grass-fed beef,
Yeah,
that is a health food.
absolutely. And the butter that's grass-fed,
Exactly.
because we have a higher omega-3 compared to grain-fed, which is a high omega-6.
Yeah,
So
that's
quite
actually bringing up the issue of omega-3 and omega-6. That's actually the last bit of detail around these polyunsaturated vegetable oils, because omega-3 and omega-6 are polyunsaturated, and omega-3 is hugely useful and omega-6 is not. So we were talking about this before, the ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. And what does it actually just mean, as an aside? It just means where the single bond is.
Yep.
So with an omega-3, it's after 3 carbons, and with omega-6, it's after 6 carbons.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all that means. Omega-3 is anti-inflammatory.
Yes.
Omega-6 is inflammatory.
Yeah.
Now, you need some inflammation. So inflammation is a good process. So if you cut yourself, we need inflammation.
Yeah.
If you get an infected cut, you need inflammation. But the problem in modern society is we have too much inflammation. So joint issues and
across the
lots of
board,
stuff. Yeah.
just about every illness you could just about put it back to inflammation.
Exactly.
Just about every, like heart disease. So that's really, really interesting, and it's really good to get a report that us hunters are actually doing an okay job. We kind of knew that, but the biodiversity of New Zealand is so complex compared to other countries, because all of our four-legged animals that roam, our mammals at least, they're all introduced, so they don't actually. Yeah, the alternative would be to poison them with 1080 or to do something else, maybe affect them so they couldn't reproduce. But going out on foot and hunting them, it's great for young men. I'm really pleased to see the government has actually put $500,000 into teaching young men how to hunt deer, to keep numbers controlled, but also put food on the table, more importantly for family, for whānau, and fishing, hunting, gathering, all that stuff there leads to a very healthy lifestyle.
I'd love to know, Clay, so I got that right.
Yeah.
Clay cooked an incredible meal for us last night. It was a degustation. I think we had 5 courses.
6 in total, actually, because the cheese is at the end.
Yeah,
I eat the cheeses. I had 6 because I only eat once every 24 hours, so I have a huge amount of tucker. But it was its 5-course meal last night.
And some of it was what you'd hunted and gathered, and some was purchased, and a lot of it had come from your vegetable gardens.
Yep.
It'd be so interesting to know the cost of that meal, compared with the cost of buying it all from the supermarket.
Well, I'm going to create a new cooking, grow, or gather, grow, catch, cook channel with a new kitchen that's behind me. I'm going to bring that to you, and Glenn has suggested this, and I think it's a great suggestion, that we itemise what it actually costs to cook a meal when you do everything yourself. The actual physical, like you could hold the bullet, 50 cents for a 22 cartridge, the rabbit, so that costs that much to get that. And we're going to break it down, what it would actually cost for you to be self-sustaining. And I think in these uncertain times when pandemic is almost normal to raise its ugly head again, Glenn's just put he's built his own glass house, incredible. So he's already getting himself ready for your own vegetables, and we live off the land quite a bit now, and a lot more. We still have things a long way to go, and it's a lot of hard work, but it's also a lot of reward when you sit down and eat like we did last night. I went out and harvested all the vegetables out of the garden. The only thing that was bought was salmon, and that was the only thing, and that's because we're just on the verge of waiting for the kahawai to come in right now.
Is that because they wouldn't allow you to poach them from the salmon farm?
Basically, yeah. Yes, that was the only thing that was bought, and normally I would have actually provided the fish, but I couldn't get out and catch any. I tried to, went out the day before and I got none. So there's times where you will need the supermarket. You'd be fooling yourself to think I'm going to be 100% self-reliant, because you can't. You need things, but it's really good if you can get that down. So I really encourage people to hunt and to grow their own vegetables and to gather, get out and get the mushrooms when they're growing, go into the forest and see what you can find. You can get a lot of stuff. There's stuff all around you. You don't have to buy it. You've got kawa growing wild, makes great tea. You've got manuka, makes a great tea. You've got so many plants that you can actually, stinging nettle. When I had that operation, my hemoglobin dropped down so low, I drank stinging nettle tea and I had liver. That was the two things to get my hemoglobin back up and build it back up naturally. I also did have an infusion of iron, but most of it came from the stinging nettle tea. Something that we consider a pest, or it's a plant that's, it's a real problem, but actually dried up, it's really high in iron. Just one of the many plants. Anyway, you're here to tell us, what else are we going to talk about today?
Well, I was just going to say, with your costing out the cooking show, that rabbit you're talking about, that's one bullet for 50 cents. If it had been me, that would be 12 bullets. So it's an expensive main course.
He's a brilliant doctor. He's a shit hunter. I've taken out. Having said that, though, when I took him out pig hunting, we did a really hard yards up in the national park about 4 years ago, and he's also an athlete. And I was really surprised how you were just like machined it up there, and I was pretty fit at that time.
Yeah.
You were really fit, so you got the fitness, just hasn't got the hunting prey drive part. But I reckon you'd become a great hunter if you learnt. I reckon you could be. I'm kind of getting off track a bit there, but I think you would, because you've got an incredible fitness.
Hey, well, let's can we talk about meat?
Yeah, absolutely.
So meat gets a bad rap. Meat is there's science suggesting that meat causes cancer.
I've read that.
I think that you've got to put it into context, and I think our New Zealand environment is quite different.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that science around meat causing cancer is coming from the US.
Processed meat. And also...
I think some of the studies, 50% of the meat is hamburger.
Yeah, right.
Which is a processed meat.
Mm-hmm.
Then... what was I going to say?
You're going to talk about the fact that the cattle are grain-fed, not grass-fed?
Yeah, absolutely. So these feedlots, when you look at into the eyes of a cow, there was some when we came across on the ferry yesterday, there was some in a crate on the back of the truck.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I was sitting there for about 10 minutes just looking at them. There's a lot going on behind those eyes. The cow is an intelligent and emotionally intelligent creature.
Yes.
To put them on a concrete pad in the hot sun for month after month after month, force feeding them grain, that's not the way to treat an intelligent animal. And I think that the meat that comes from an animal that's been treated like that is going to be low quality. It's going to be different from the meat that's produced in New Zealand. We have a unique environment, don't we, where we can grow our cows and our sheep outside for 12 months of the year, and they eat grass or hay or silage. That's all produced on the same land.
Yeah. Very,
very different from what happens in the United States, where they're trucking in grain. And we were talking about the omega-3 and omega-6.
Yeah.
The omega-6 to 3 ratio in grain-fed beef is dramatically different from the omega-6 to 3 ratio in pasture-fed. And in some cases, that ratio, omega-6 to 3, in grass-fed beef is better than it is in some seafood.
Wow.
So we talk about getting your omega-3s from seafood. If you fed salmon with pellets made from grain, you would get a high omega-6 to omega-3 ratio compared to cows that are fed on pasture.
That's interesting, isn't it?
That have a very good omega-3 to 6 ratio. So it makes sense. What you feed the animal affects the quality of the meat.
Hugely. Yeah. That's a very interesting point you raise, that it's actually higher than fish, which makes me think maybe I shouldn't have bought that salmon, because the one I bought yesterday and fed him came from a salmon farm and probably was fed pellets. I don't know that, but
I think that you were saying that they're seafood pellets, not grain pellets.
Yeah, I believe so, but I don't 100% know. But that's probably another topic for another day. So let's talk about the vegetarian, vegan versus the meat eaters, because I come under a huge amount of fire, particularly from vegan. Vegetarians not so much, but vegan. And the keto diet, it actually is a lot of vegetables in it. For some it's more, depending on how your stomach is and how you view lectins. Some people are against certain vegetables because of the high amount of lectins. I think you can always deal with that by either cooking it or doing something. I'm talking about tomatoes are high in lectins. I get a lot of flack, particularly from vegans, and downright hate. And interesting, one of my one guy that was arguing is actually my nephew. And hi, Luca, if you're watching this. He said to me, we know you don't have a problem with us vegans, but we have a problem with you. And I thought, well, that's so true. They do have a problem with us. I don't think they fully are prepared to hear the whole story. I think they filter out the bits that they don't feel comfortable with, because they believe that it's wrong just to kill an animal. That they base it on that, and that's an emotional thing. Yet we know that the whole world has to have killing of animals, whether it's in Africa, the wolf's got to kill, the lion's got to kill, everything's got to kill, and we're at the top of the food chain, we also have to kill. That's the part of the equation that they just cannot accept, that we have no right to kill, when in fact we do have a right to kill, but that becomes a debatable thing that makes everything else go out the window. All the science that you can lay on the table doesn't matter, you're not allowed to kill. And a lot of vegans believe you're not allowed to own pets too. They think you shouldn't have a pet because you've got to kill to sustain the pet. So it's kind of a difficult one, but if you get to the guts of it, what is your spin on that?
So again, comes back to this concept around contextualizing it, because in New Zealand we have deer and pigs that are killing the native bush, and they need to be culled. So you can either shoot them and leave them there, or you can shoot them and bring them home to use for organic meat. They still have to be culled.
Yeah.
There's no question that those animals have to be culled to protect our natural environment. It's a crime, an absolute crime, to leave that animal there to rot when that is high quality protein and healthy fats with fantastic omega 3 to 6 ratios. We should be bringing that home, and we should be using that to feed our families and our communities. So the animals have to be culled anyway. We should be using them, and what's more, we should try and eat every part of that animal, not just take the hindquarters and leave the rest there. We should be using the liver and every part that we can.
I'd like to take you deer hunting backcountry and see how difficult it is to carry a whole deer out. This lies the problem. Now, I know cullers that do it, and I've been a culler myself. The reality is that a lot of that backcountry hunting you do, it's just physically impossible to get. If you're cleaning out 12 deer, you'd need a helicopter to get in there, and then the meat becomes nobody could afford to buy it because the cost of the machine. So the logistics of getting animals out. We're getting onto another sort of talk about that, but cullers are actually probably hated amongst the public. I'm talking about professional cullers. I know plenty of them, and also other hunters, because they do have to leave animals behind, and it's a reality. They go into places where most people won't go, and they have to do that job. So there's another thing of the logistics of getting out. But having said that, there is plenty of animals, if you're prepared to go for a walk and do the hard yards. Carrying one whole deer out is hard. You can be talking 200 pounds if you can take the whole lot. So field dressing it, taking the skin off. If you wanted to take the brains, and you want to take all the liver, and you want to take the kidneys and all the meat, you're still carrying a hell of a lot of weight. The logistics of doing that is very difficult. So it's a tough one, but I'm all for. I carry out as much as I can.
Yeah.
Do as much as you can.
And it's this concept of, if the animal has given up its life for our sustenance,
Yep.
to be as respectful as you can to that animal, we should eat as much as we practically can. And I certainly accept what you're saying, that to carry a full deer out is going to be a lot of work, but as much as we practically can, I think is the message, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So is veganism sustainable on the planet or not?
Just, it's a fantastic question. I've been contemplating, before I answer that, the science behind veganism and our version of the keto diet, which is having a lot of plants as well as the animal and plant sources of fat and protein. So the science, and then I've been wondering, why is it that a vegan diet can cure type 2 diabetes and a keto diet can cure type 2 diabetes, but they seem to be at the other end of the spectrum? I think the answer is, and it's the same as the question about rice, the problem is all the sugar, all the highly refined carbohydrates, and all the polyunsaturated vegetable oils. So if you look at some of the vegan doctors that have done a lot of work in this area, Ornish being one.
Yep.
They cut sugar and refined carbohydrates out, and they cut the polyunsaturated vegetable oils as well as other things, which is what we're doing on keto as well.
Yeah.
We're cutting out the polyunsaturated vegetable oils and we're avoiding sugar.
Right.
And so I think those are the key issues, and that's why keto and veganism aren't too far away from a scientific point of view, because I think we've now identified the culprits, the problem which is making the environment obesogenic, or creating a high amount of diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's, cancer. I think the main culprits are sugar, highly refined carbohydrates, biscuits, flour, bread. And these polyunsaturated seed oils, margarine, canola oil. Get rid of those things from your diet. I think it matters less what's left behind.
Yep.
Except if you have a particular health problem that you're trying to address. For example, if you had type 2 diabetes, you're going to have to lower the carbs really strictly.
Yep.
If you've, for example, got cancer that you're wanting to cure, you're probably going to have to use fasting, intermittent fasting,
Can you talk about
and keto.
Can you talk about that? Because I eat one meal a day, and I have for the last 2 years. Occasionally I'll have a 2 or 3 week period where I'll go to 2 meals, but for the best part, every 24 hours is when I eat just once. And a lot of people say, why do you do that? You need to eat more. You're too skinny. And I am skinny. But Glenn could actually let you guys know why that's important if you're someone like me with cancer in remission. I'm classed as having cancer in remission now. And I'm still here, and it's working.
The first thing I do have to owe you an apology for cooking bacon this morning
Oh, yeah.
in front of somebody who's one meal a day, and they eat that meal at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That was deliberately cruel.
That was cruel. I came in and I could smell bacon in the kitchen and eggs. Like, oh, geez. Yeah. That was
We
torture.
we actually waited until we heard your car coming up the driveway before we put it on.
Yeah, right.
We could have eaten it, finished it, and cleaned up, and you wouldn't have known. But we
you
wanted
waited.
to torture you.
Thanks for that. Yeah.
That's all right.
I'm still salivating thinking about the smell of it.
So why would somebody fast or use intermittent fasting if they had cancer? The answer is that when you're in the fasted state, when you haven't eaten, that's when the body recycles and repairs. In the fed state, that's when the body builds. Now, if you're a toddler, your whole purpose is to grow, and so you kind of want to be eating virtually all the time. When you get to our age, we kind of want to stop growing, and the problem is it's hard to stop growing at our age because you kind of grow here.
Yeah.
So we want to extend the period of time where we're not growing and minimize the period of time when we are growing. So if you eat your first meal at midday and your second meal at 6 o'clock, you've got 18 hours of fasting, and if I've done the maths correctly, and then 6 hours of being fed. Yes. 16, 8.
That's intermittent fasting. Yeah.
And then what Clay is doing is he's eating one meal a day, so it's basically, depending on how long you eat for, which is if it was easily an hour last night.
Easy an hour last night, yeah.
That's 23 hours fasting,
state.
1 hour of being fed.
Yeah.
I think that's ideal if you are trying to prevent cancer, cure cancer, or maintain remission from cancer. Increase the period of time where the cancer surveillance happens, where damaged cells are replaced and recycled. So eating once a day, I think, is absolutely perfect. And then some people with active cancer might eat, they might prolong their fasts.
Yeah.
They might do a 3-day, a 5-day, a 7-day fast, and sometimes people even longer. However, I would say if that is something that you're exploring, going more than the 24 hours, I think you need some knowledge, some additional knowledge.
And use some salt too, I'd say.
Yeah, salt, fluids, possibly supplements, the things to watch out for. So there's a bit more science along those prolonged fasts, but I think everybody can go to 1 meal a day or 2 meals a day really, really easily. I talk about 1 meal a day is OMAD.
Yep.
2 meals a day is too mad, but 6 meals a day is just fucking stupid.
Yeah. Okay, let's just talk about viruses, particularly in these times of COVID. What can people do to increase their chances of surviving this pandemic is going on right now?
Yeah, such an important question, and it's really not talked about, yet it should be, because there are so many things that you can change in your lifestyle that will keep you well. And if you were exposed to a virus, whether that be COVID or influenza or RSV, you're less likely to get sick. And they're not complicated things, and it's the things that we talk about all the time. It's getting the right amount of sleep for you. So people who are sleep deprived are more susceptible to becoming unwell from viruses.
Right.
Yeah, not complicated.
Yeah.
Eating well, and we've talked a lot already about what does that look like. It's avoiding sugar, avoiding processed foods, avoiding these processed carbohydrates, and avoiding these low quality vegetable oils, and minimizing the amount of carbohydrate to within your individual carbohydrate tolerance. So eating well, making sure that you're having plenty of organic homegrown vegetables.
What is the thing that a person can look at their body, and what's a sign that they can see that their diet needs to change?
I'll give you an easy one. Walk into a wall, and if your tummy is the first thing that hits the wall, then you are insulin resistant. You need to do what we just talked about then. Walk into a wall, it should be your nose that hits first. If it's not your nose that hits first, or perhaps if you're a woman, it might be your breasts, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But if it's your tummy that hits first, you've got a problem.
If it's your old fella, then does that be a problem?
That's contextual, I think.
Okay.
Isn't it?
I think so, yeah. Also depends on age. Very interesting. And a lot of my friends that are our age, she's got the tummy.
Yeah.
And you know straight away we can change that.
Yeah,
and it doesn't take long for that tummy to go in. I've got guys that now that I've put on keto diet, Salwan's one, g'day Salwan if you're watching, he lost 20 kilogram and now he's just fit. His mind is better, he looks better, he's got a flat stomach. And carrying animals out of the bush, he's even stronger. Because he's not carrying that extra 20 kilogram. So you add that's like another 50 odd pound that you're carrying.
That's a lot. If you're carrying a 20 kg pack, that's a heavy pack.
Yeah.
Like if you're going just for a tramp, you want it to be around 13, 13 probably.
Yeah.
If you're carrying a 20 kg pack, you've got 7 days worth of food in there. That's a heavy pack.
Yeah.
A lot of people carry that every time they
day.
walk upstairs, every time they get in and out of their car.
The joints, the heart, everything is suffering. Yeah. I've noticed since I'm light on my feet, even without doing fitness training, I get the hill and I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm naturally fit. So that's really cool. So you've talked about getting enough sleep for your immune system, the right food. Would you put exercise in there too?
Yeah. And we were talking before about what is the right type of exercise, and we could do a 5-hour video about that.
Yeah, we could.
To make that simple, I think it's what you enjoy. You know, the right sort of exercise for you predominantly is what you enjoy and what you can practically do regularly. And often that ends up as walking, because you don't have to have specialized equipment. You don't have to make sure the tires are pumped up. You don't have to have a gym in your garage. I think everyone can go for a walk. And if it's raining, you can take an umbrella. You know, so walking works. But if you want to get more technical, you might want to do some resistance training. But I don't know if you have to go to the gym. Gardening is resistance training.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, you try turning dirt over.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to talk to Glenn about was I wanted to talk about vaccines, and his partner said, no, he's not allowed to. And she said, you can't talk about that because you're just not allowed to. And so that's why we're not going to talk about that topic. I just wanted to put that in there. He actually was open to talk about it, and she is the boss. She's the boss.
But one of the things that's a hugely complex topic.
Yeah.
And I'm not a virologist. I'm not a vaccinologist. It's really a complex topic. And
what would you suggest people do their own due diligence?
Absolutely.
And where would they go to do that?
I think read as much as you can on the topic and read widely.
But what source? Because there's so many sources that are biased. Is there any one particular place that you're going to get accurate information all the time? Really?
I think it's a really difficult question because it's very polarized, isn't it?
Yeah, it is very polarized.
The best I could say is read really, really widely. And we were talking about this yesterday. That responsibility to take personal responsibility for your health, and it's what you've done with your prostate cancer. You've been so proactive. You've researched the shit out of it. When you've gone to your doctor's appointments, acknowledging that those doctors are experts in their field, but you've gone there with knowledge, you've been able to have discussions about the detail. And I admire you hugely for doing that, because a lot of people don't do that. They'll just it's not just with doctors, it's with you taking your car to the mechanic. If you've had a bit of a look, you've done a bit of Googling, you got a bit of an idea what's wrong. It's so different from saying, well, look, it's broken. Same thing with all of these medical topics. The internet has created this environment where if we put the effort in, we can be highly knowledgeable. It's still difficult to transfer that knowledge into context, I think. But you can then go and have conversations from a place of being informed rather than from a place of being uninformed. And I think that's the key. And read widely on any medical topic. A lot of people apologize to me when they come into my general practice for Googling something. And I find that so bizarre. I go, why would you apologize for... They say, I know you don't like me looking things up. And I'm going, no, I want you to be absolutely fully informed. I want them to argue with me. I want every one of my patients, I hate the word, I want them to be a total pain in the ass. I want them to question me on everything every single thing. And something as important as your health and making these decisions about having a medication or a therapy or not, you have to put the time and effort in. And then I want them to come in and be a total pain in the ass and question me about everything. And I want them to call me out if I'm bullshitting. If the answer is not a good answer, they should be calling me out. So
this is what is probably one of the reasons why you've been voted GP of the Year award. I'm going to interrupt for a little minute now, because I've got quite a few of my subscribers and my patrons that are dealing with cancer right now, and I'm going to get you to take a screenshot of... Can you tell us a little bit about Anna? This is Anna Goodwin. I'm going to get a screenshot of this for you guys, so you can get their details. There. All right, we're going to get that to focus or not? I don't know. Is it focusing? Oh, there we go. Focusing now. Can you talk about this person, Glenn?
Yeah, so this is Reversal NZ, which is a lifestyle medicine clinic, and this is Dr. Anna Goodwin, who is an American board certified oncologist, and she is working for Reversal NZ as a natural health practitioner. So she's almost unique, certainly unique in New Zealand, I would think, but maybe unique internationally in that she has knowledge about all of the modern oncology treatments, radiotherapy, all of these new oncology medicines. But she's also a natural health practitioner, so she understands the role of lifestyle and diet and supplementation. And a lot of people say to me, when they see an oncologist, they leave frustrated because they ask, what should I eat? Or how should I exercise? Or is meditation useful? Is yoga helpful? All of these questions, and they don't usually get evidence-based or science-based answers to this.
I've had experience of that myself.
And particularly the diet question, what should I eat? And when should I eat? These are powerful treatments that shouldn't be ignored. They shouldn't be given, just eat healthy. I think that's a long conversation. And then each cancer is different. You can't make I guess you can make broad statements, but in terms of supplementation in particular, each cancer is nuanced, and you have to have a massive amount of knowledge. That's what Anna has, to know for each individual cancer what is the right way to eat for that. And the thing that's impressed me most about Anna, she's the only specialist where I've ever seen references at the end of her referral letter.
I love that.
So when she's provided an opinion, she's referenced that. So then when you get that, you can then go away and you can look at the reference.
Do your due diligence.
Yeah.
So thank you, Anna. And if you guys have that struggle or that challenge, you're climbing that mountain with a cancer thing right now, and I know what that's like. take a screenshot, go back, take a screenshot of that, and contact and get some help. I've got a lot of guys right now, men with cancer, with all sorts of different cancers. So cancer's out there. Hey, we'll wrap it up. Is there anything else you want to finish up by the end of this, Glenn? We've pretty much got, because we need to go for a mountain bike ride now.
We do, because we've had good food. Well, you haven't. No, you've had good fasting. I've had that bacon. Sorry.
Start up about the bacon.
Okay, so we've had a really good sleep.
Yeah,
Did you sleep well? You slept on the houseboat.
Yeah, I slept on the houseboat. I could sleep. Yeah.
I had a fantastic sleep. We've had community.
Yes.
And companionship and friendship, which is a really important part
Huge.
of
Massive.
because we are social animals.
Yes.
And whether that socialization happens in a modern form, like this, or whether it's it's always going to be better face to face.
Yeah.
So we've had the sleep, we've had the food, we've had the fasting, we've had good quality water too, because your water's bore water, isn't it?
Yep.
And now we're going to do a bit of exercise in the sunshine.
We
We didn't mention vitamin D.
No, big one. It's a big one.
Vitamin D is really important.
I actually supplement vitamin D. It's one thing I do supplement.
But you know that it's like grass-fed beef and organic hunted meat, really good sources.
Really
of
good
vitamin
source.
D.
Also sardines, really good for your vitamin D too.
Yeah. So we're going to get some vitamin D because the sun's coming out.
That's another good way to get it. Yep.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, really.
it.
I'm very grateful to have friends in my life like Glenn. He has been my friend for many, many years, and he's made a real effort to keep this friendship up. Really, you're really good at that. In fact, if I'd come and see you as much as you come and see me, we'd be equal. I feel a bit guilty, but you extend lots of invitations, and I'm just not. So he's really also a man that is proactive in maintaining his relationships, and that's something actually that needs to be added to this: maintaining good relationships with the people in your life that add value. And you're one of my really good friends, and I really cherish you. And I'm also incredibly proud of you because you are doing cutting edge stuff, and you're coming up against a lot of resistance, and you're going to come up a lot more, particularly with heart specialists and that on this latest finding, which is not that actually, it's actually something I think you researched, you found, the paper was written in 2014.
The one about the even and the odd chain.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. But Glenn is forged forward, and it's for the better of us, and he's making a huge difference, and will continue to do so. So,
a couple of things on that.
Mm-hmm.
What you're doing here, you're influencing a lot of people really positively. And I know the main reason that you can't come and visit me in Taupo is because it actually takes a lot of time and effort to do this. I imagine people see the video and it lasts for 40 minutes. It's not 40 minutes to produce the video.
Yeah.
There's a lot of time and effort and time spent on the internet. So I know that part of it is because you're actually really busy. Yeah, so.
But you're also really busy. I guess you're including.
I'm on holiday.
Now you're doing a talk in the hospital, aren't you, down here?
At a conference.
At a conference.
Hey, the other thing is, thanks for letting me mention this new business.
Yep.
I know it sounds a bit like advertising, but I really want people to know that Anna's there. She is unique and special, and would be very, very valuable for anyone who does have cancer.
I totally get that. Yeah.
I know it's promoting a business, but I really do want people to know that service is available.
Oh, it's critical. We need something extra. Okay, should we go and get the wheels spinning? Get some heart and lungs going.
Exhausted.
You're tired now. We'll have another coffee then, eh? Okay, guys, that's Glenn Davies, Dr. Glenn Davies from the Taupo Medical Centre, and try and take on even just one bit of this. If you could just knock out sugar, you'd be already a good start. If you don't take anything else in the whole video, just take out sugar and refined carbohydrates. Be good, or at least try to be good. If you can't be good, be careful, and we'll see you next video. That was awesome, bro. Thank you.